I've convinced myself that I have a third child I've never met, and it bothers me since I'd love to meet them. When I was 19 or 20, there was this girl Lisa who lived in my neighborhood. She was a year or two younger than me, and I always found her attractive. Even though I'd lived there 16 years at that point and she lived there for about 10 years of that, we knew of each other and had a lot of mutual friends, but we personally had never met. One day she ended up coming over to my house with one of our mutual friends. We all hung out for hours, and it turns out I liked her personality as well as her beauty. So we talked and got to know each other better, and she would occasionally come over by herself and hang out for a little bit when she had free time. After a while, we always used protection, and we always talked for a bit afterwards, then she'd go home. The last time I saw her, she said she was moving soon. She never said why or where to, and since it was a casual friends with benefits situation, I didn't see much point in asking. This would have been around 1999/2000, so social media was new and most people didn't have cell phones, so staying in touch would have taken more effort back then. The day before she left, she came over for one more sexual encounter. Neither of us had a condom and she wasn't on birth control, but we both really wanted it. So we had sex one last time, and she kept saying make sure you pull out. When I tried to, she had her legs wrapped around me so tight that I couldn't. I even told her she had to let go, so it wasn't an oops or not trying to pull out situation. I was scared to death afterwards. I was like, what if you get pregnant? She said she'd keep it because she doesn't believe in abortion, then joked that maybe someday someone would show up at my door saying they're my kid. For 23 to 24 years, I've anticipated that moment, but it hasn't come. I have a 22-year-old daughter and 17-year-old son, and being a dad is my favorite thing in the world. I'd love to find out I had another kid, but I'd be heartbroken at the same time for missing so much time with them. The worst part is, I never knew her last name. All I know is that her name is Lisa and she is pretty. So I couldn't even look her up if I wanted to, and it really weighs on my mind, because it's likely that I'll never know either way. Comment. If you know what house she lived in, you can probably pull public records and see who owned the house during that time, assuming they wasn't renting. If her parents are still alive, you could find them and tell them you're trying to find their daughter because she was a childhood friend. It's a long shot, but you never know. I would caution though that if she did get pregnant and had a kid, there is probably a reason she didn't try to find you, so you may not want to go stirring up things that could ruin someone's life. I can't ruin anything, I have nothing to work with. Don't know the house, but I do know it was a rental, so it's literally a dead end. It just sucks to know you might have another kid, but also know you'll never know unless they somehow track you down. Well, I have family that was adopted and they was able to find their biological family with just a name, so if they exist and they want to find you, there's a good chance they will. I know it ain't much, but hopefully you can get a little comfort in that. I'll give you credit for even remembering that. At that age most people would have forgot all about it. I kinda think she would have come back to let you know if she had gotten pregnant because she knew where you lived. However, you could take a DNA test. It's really popular these days, and there's a high probability that if there was a child he/she would always wonder who their dad was and take a test to figure out their background. If I were you, I would do a 23andMe and an ancestry test and just see what happens. Worst case scenario, you end up with some new cousin or long lost aunt or uncle. Next story 2. Am I insecure for breaking up with my ex-girlfriend? I broke up with my ex-girlfriend a few weeks ago after we had been dating for about 8 months. The deal breaker for me was the people that she was friends with. The more stories I heard about them, the more uncomfortable it made me. One of her friends has cheated on her husband like 10 times and he doesn't know. 2 of her other friends secretly hooked up with each other and their spouses don't know. Another friend is supposedly in a new, committed relationship but went home with some guy from a bar, on a night that my ex-girlfriend was out with her. My ex-girlfriend actually ended up coming to my place that night when her friend ditched her to go with that guy and told me everything. On one hand, I wouldn't have known any of this had she not told me, and I do believe she was always honest with me, didn't cheat, etc. But at the same time, I don't want to hang around people that cheat on their partners, and am not okay with the idea of my girlfriend, potentially wife, choosing to hang out with those kinds of people. We had a serious conversation where I told her how I felt. She started crying pretty hard, saying that I was punishing her for being honest, that I was being controlling, and forcing her to choose between me and her best friends that she has known for like 10 years. I'd like to think I'm not a controlling guy. I've never told her or any previous girlfriends that they can't go out with their friends. But as time went on and I heard more stories, it was just too much for me to be comfortable with. In my mind, it sounds perfectly reasonable that you wouldn't want your partner to hang out with people who cheat. But I will admit that I have been cheated on before, and that may have something to do with my feelings. Which is why I made this post. Was I being insecure, or would you break up with someone because all their best friends are cheaters? Comment. I think it's not a very mature reason to break up with someone, yes. You don't need to like or endorse her friends or hang out with them. If she expects that from you, that's something you should talk about with her. And yes, I think it's controlling from your part. It's okay to ask her why she's still friends with them or whether it's bothering her, but not to tell her to stop being friends with them. My general motto would be, if the thing doesn't need to influence your relationship in any way, it doesn't have to be an obstacle. You have a right to your boundaries and she has a right to hers. Therefore you two are incompatible. The odd thing about this is that you would probably not even know about her friends cheating if your ex-GF had not told you about them. What was her stance with regard to what they were doing? Did she condemn them? No big deal. What? She agreed that what they were doing was wrong and she didn't support it. Although, these were her only close friends and she'd known them for a long time, which I can respect. Still made me uncomfortable when she would go on nights out or on trips with these friends. Next story 3. My ex-BFF reached out to me after 3 years of them ghosting me. I have an ex-best friend of what would have been almost 9 years trying to come back into my life after 3 years of no contact. It was a great friendship, but the relationship she was in seemed to turn her into this bitter, mean, narcissistic person. Either that or she has always been that way and he just highlighted it. She would talk ugly about her other friends and I felt I'd be a fool to think she wouldn't speak upon me that same way, and was very braggadocious about her relationship despite him being a very difficult man for her to please and hardly did anything for her. It even got to a point where I stopped wanting to hang out because our meetups were disingenuous and was made clear when her BF would blow up her phone asking where she was while we were out, and she's pretend like she didn't know they were in a fight and that's why we were hanging out. I felt like a chess piece in their little game instead of a BFF. Mind you, we were friends in high school, so our friendship didn't always look like this, only since he came in the picture, so it was really disheartening. Long story how the friendship ended. Anyway, one night she did the typical thing that some of us women do that we think our friends won't catch on to, the whole "my man's getting tired of my presence, so I'm going to call up some girlfriends to show that I have a life outside of him," or at least she was doing this and it was so obvious. She had to convince me to go clubbing cause my hair wasn't done, and ultimately I didn't want to, but I said yes prior and I hate letting my friends down, so I went. While we were out there was this group Aussie guys visiting, and one of the guys were cute and were interested in me after conversation, so he kept giving me drinks. I don't club or drink often, so I don't know my limit, especially on a day where I actually ate a larger meal than usual, so the drinks didn't hit right away. That said, I got sh*t faced was all over the bathroom stall. When I got out I couldn't walk. At one point I was lying on the floor literally unable to stand, and my friend kept saying get up or we're going to get arrested for public intoxication. I'm thinking, really? On a bar strip? Your concern is they're going to arrest us? Mind you, she's not even helping me up. She just appears embarrassed, but she calls my mom and tells her I'm really faded in hope that maybe she can pick me up. Her boyfriend ends up picking us up, she puts me in my room in my house. Next day she had a whole attitude and was short with me. In my mind I could have been drugged and I didn't even want to go, but she's so narcissistic, she acts like I ruined her night and deserve silent treatment, so I let her be. Shortly after my cousin dies I text her to let her know, only to be ghosted for the next 3 years over a bad night out. I thought it was dumb, but here she is groveling back and I don't know how to feel about it. It's been 3 years, I don't think you can go back to being besties like that after so much time has passed. Comment. Maybe hear her out, maybe she's changed. If she's still the same person you described, then cut her loose.